This is about the fabulous lost gold reef that Lasseter found in Western Australia. In 1897, a camel driver, an Afghani camel driver, found a prospector, Lasseter, in the West Australian desert, mad of hunger and thirst, and took him to the camp of a Western Australian government surveyor. And he showed the surveyor samples he'd taken of gold-bearing rocks. The surveyor took him back to civilization, built up his health, and 3 years later the surveyor and Lasseter returned to the desert to find the gold reef. They found the gold reef and they very carefully determined the longitude and latitude of the find, and then returned to civilization. After 800 miles riding through the desert, they came into the town of Carnarvon, and as they came in, they looked at the town hall clock, and they suddenly realised a terrible mistake had been made. Their chronometers were showing the completely wrong time, which meant that the carefully recorded latitudes and longitudes were wrong. Shortly after this, there were major gold finds on the Kalgoorlie goldfields, so nobody was interested in Lasseter's find. But in 1930, in the midst of the Depression, when it was only gold that was increasing in value, Lasseter was able to get together a major investment for a big expedition to look for his gold reef. The expedition had the use of aeroplanes and trucks adapted for the desert. But everything went wrong. Shortly before they left Alice Springs, a witch doctor, an Aboriginal witch doctor, pointed the bone at Lasseter, and perhaps that's why everything went downhill. But they went out into the desert, the trucks broke down, the planes crashed, everybody argued, the whole thing was a shambles. And eventually it was decided that only Lasseter himself and a dingo hunter called Paul Johns would go on to look for the gold. They went on out into the desert with their camels, and they found themselves getting on very badly. They were irritating each other, and one day they had an almighty fight and a shot was fired, and this was sobering for them. They realised it simply couldn't go on, and it was decided that Lasseter would go on alone. Lasseter went on, and again, for the third time, found his gold reef, and this time he carefully recorded the location with photographs. He then started to make his way back to civilization, and he'd reached a stage where his camels were greatly in need of water and had to have water within 2 days. He had to work hard at restraining them, but in the evening, as he was starting to make camp, the camels bolted and took with them all his water and most of his food. He then came across an Aboriginal tribe. The tribe weren't much impressed with Lasseter. They could live in the desert without difficulty, and they felt he was a bit inadequate, but they allowed him to tag along. He had one great advantage That is, he had a pistol and 5 bullets, and he knew that this gave him some authority in the tribe. On one occasion, the tribe decided to go out into the desert to look at their sweet potato plot. They set off out into the desert, and when they came to the sweet potatoes, the potatoes were rotten. At that stage, it was open to the tribe to simply retrace their steps. But they decided to go on further out into the desert to the next sweet potato plot. But when they got to that plot, those sweet potatoes were diseased as well. At this stage, the young and the fit could make it back, but the old people would inevitably die if they returned. But they decided to press their luck further and go further out into the desert to the final sweet potato plot. When they got out to those sweet potatoes, they were diseased as well. Fortunately, Lasseter was able to shoot a wild camel with one of his remaining bullets and save the tribe. As the tribe went round the countryside, Lasseter would leave tins with notes in explaining what had occurred under the campfires. He also put in one of these cans the negatives of the films that he'd taken of the find. Eventually, the tribe abandoned him and he just trailed along behind them, and he died of malnutrition and he was blind at the time. Subsequently, an expedition set out to find him, and they found his body, they found his diary, and then they went back looking for the campfires and digging up these tins. And in the course of doing so, they came across a group of Aborigines, and one of them had round his neck the film that Lasseter had taken, so it was exposed and ruined. About 3 years ago, yet another expedition set out to find Lasseter's fabulous gold reef, but unsuccessfully. So, if you're interested, it's still out there.